Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Katherine Lewis, and I am a software engineer and accessibility champion at LinkedIn. I would love to get started by y'all putting in the chat where you are from and what's not on your LinkedIn profile. And if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, well, I guess we'll tolerate it for now and go ahead and share a fun fact about yourself in the chat. For me, I am tuning in from San Francisco, California, and what's not on my profile is that I can pogo stick and jump rope at the same time. So with that, let's get going. Welcome to my talk on how I became an accidental accessibility evangelist. To describe myself, I am a European American woman with short blonde hair. Today, I am wearing a white shirt and a black jacket with white markings, and my background is a white wall. I go by she, her, and I'd like to give a thanks to Rachel and Nicole for interpreting for me today. Another quick bit of housekeeping on my side, all of my slide images are decorative. If you would like to follow along, these slides should be on the webpage where this talk is being displayed. We will have a Q&A at the end, as Heidi mentioned. Feel free to put your questions in there. In this talk, I am going to share how anyone can become an influential accessibility evangelist, regardless of their title or prior training. If you are new to accessibility, welcome. I hope you learn a few things that will help you get started. If you have been in this space for a long time, may this be a simple reminder that anyone in your community can join our efforts in no time. No need to wait until you have funding to get help. Find an empathetic person who has extra passion and energy and bring them on board. If you have ever spent any significant time around kids, it's likely you've been there to watch them mess up. And when they do, it's likely they have an explanation at the ready. It usually goes like this. Rana, why are there handprints all over the walls? And they respond, Sam made me do it. Or maybe you've heard, it was an accident. These are all great go-tos for any kid trying to get out of trouble. When I was younger, in about the 4th grade, I had a project I had to do for social studies. It was back in the day before Twitter, so I had to use a newspaper to get written news. My dad took me to the local gas station and sent me inside with 2 quarters. It was starting to get dark and I was nervous to go in alone, so I knew I had to be quick about my mission. I walked in with tunnel vision and did a quick glance around searching for the newspaper stand. If I had been a robot, my radio antenna would have been out and a red light on top of my head would have been flashing as I turned around the corner. Bam! Found them. I quickly grabbed one on top, checked for a price tag, and headed out. When I opened the car door, I jumped in and proudly handed my dad back his 50 cents. My dad is a big man. He has broad shoulders, is well over 6 feet tall, and has a military background. When I didn't hear him respond, I glanced up. And when I saw his eyes get big, I knew I had messed up. Did it not cost anything? No, I replied. Katherine, are you sure? Yes, Dad, I'm sure. I didn't see a sign or anything. But he, being an experienced adult, knew differently. So I had to get out of the car, walk back inside, and pay the 50 cents. I felt so guilty. I had stolen, but I hadn't known any better. It was an accident. You see, accidents are funny things. They are events that happen in life that no one else plans for. They tend to be pretty random. No one wants the bad ones, and yet somehow everything perfectly lines up to make them occur. When I thought about giving this talk, I knew I wanted to share with people how I unexpectedly ended up advocating for accessibility at LinkedIn. I had never planned to be interested in digital accessibility. I had never trained in this space. It was never a dream of mine since childhood to care about buying and building products that all people could use. Not that that's not a great thing, I just didn't even know it was a job. So I decided a good name for my talk was the Accidental Accessibility Evangelist. That name refers to someone who cares about the usability of products and services with great enthusiasm by chance. When I shared this with my team, they said my talk sounded great, except for one thing. Obviously, I was curious. I asked, "What's that?" They said, "You didn't get here by accident." That's when I realized there are no accidental accessibility evangelists. If you are following along, we are on slide 5. So I'd like to know in the chat, what was your favorite class in grade school or college? If I back up 6 years ago to when I was graduating business school, I looked out into the business world and was of the mindset that business as usual, quote unquote, was not doing any work that would be meaningful to me. I wanted to do good, so I joined a program called Teach for America and taught 2nd and 3rd grade in an inner city school. My first year, I co-taught 3rd grade with another teacher. Year 2, I had my own classroom, but it didn't start out that way. I was still co-teaching 3rd grade by October of my 2nd year when a 2nd grade teacher quit. The students seemed to be uninterested in learning and spent the majority of the time coloring and messing around. It was a disaster. I was given the opportunity to help them refocus and provide more structure for the class. We started November of that year with 27 students, 10 IEPs, 7 different languages, 5 behavior plans, 1.5 years of content to catch up on, and 90 incidents, an average of 4.5 per day. And by incidents, I mean behavioral altercations. I drove an hour to school, worked from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., and then drove home and planned for the next day. By the time the year was done, the students had grown 1.5 years, and we reduced our behavior incidents by 90%. But I was so burnt out and sick. The stress and the pressure I put on myself to give everything I had to the students had drained my reserves, and it was time for something else. During my summers off as a teacher, I had picked up programming when a nonprofit needed teachers to teach high school girls how to code. I signed up, figured I could figure it out, and then traveled all over the United States instructing on HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and A-Frame, a web VR framework. That led me to being accepted into a front-end programming bootcamp where I spent the next 9 months. Once I was ready to graduate from the bootcamp, I had already applied to 30+ jobs, had 6 interviews, and got a position at a local startup while working an internship for a company in Africa and a contract at a university in the South. But when I got the call to come interview for LinkedIn, I knew I couldn't say no. You see, I love LinkedIn. I've been using it for almost 15 years and used to be the only 15-year-old I ever knew to be on the platform. It has always aligned with my values and was a company I wanted to work for. When I was in business school, we got to travel to New York, meet with a bunch of companies. LinkedIn was one of them. Our group was guided to the Empire State Building, toured around, and amazed by the city views out every window. I never thought I had what it took to get into LinkedIn, and never in a million years did I expect it to be as an engineer. One of my current mentors often mentions, "You didn't make it this far because you got lucky." Another way of putting it is, you are where you are, not by accident, but by intention. And this is your first key takeaway about accessibility evangelism. Accessibility is intentional. In fact, many great things require intention. You don't just randomly wake up one morning on the moon, you must intend to go there. I was coming to see this to be very true for most things in life. Even in becoming an engineer, I had to be very intentional about how I spent my time and what I learned. The boot camp was in person in the basement of a bank. There was no natural light, lots of couches, and plenty of Pepsi and Doritos, so it was the perfect programmer's den. We had class all day and then would work on projects late into the night and on the weekends. I remember times when the basement would be empty. It would be 2 a.m. and I would be exhausted. I'd take a nap for an hour or two and then get up and wash my face before the instructors came back in the next morning for their meetings. And I'd be back at it trying to figure out React Router and Redux for a few hours before classes began again. All my energy was focused on my intention of becoming a front-end engineer. Okay, so let's switch gears. There are many types of disabilities. Some can be permanent, temporary, or situational. I'd like you to think of the name of a disability and put it in the chat. A few things that come to mind for me, in no particular order, are autism, broken arm, or a noisy environment. We are on slide 9. I'd like to introduce you to one disability in particular, acoustic neuromas. Acoustic neuromas are slow-growing tumors that affect the 8th cranial nerve, which impacts the ear, the brain, and the nervous system. That means that someone with an acoustic neuroma can lose their hearing, their balance, or the nerves in their face, affecting their eating habits, skin sensitivity, and speech. I was 8 months into my boot camp when a close friend developed a disability. It happened slowly, with some headaches, dizziness, and puzzling trips to the doctor. They had months of appointments before they found out about the issue. When their doctor found the tumor, they suggested a procedure that left my friend in worse states than before. This initiated another season of symptoms, and it was difficult for them to complete simple tasks or stand for very long because of the dizziness. At this point in my journey, I was almost done with my boot camp, and it was time to do a final project. Seeing my friend's struggles, my team and I created a speech-operated app that allowed a person with a disability to create household and personal tasks with their voice. These tasks, their details, and a method of payment would be shared with the caretaker or friend who could help with these tasks. Once someone had completed the task, such as buying groceries or mailing a bill, they could mark it off in the app, and the person with the disability would know in real time that the task had been completed, giving them peace of mind. The project won our bootcamp competition, and I had my first taste of accessibility, intentionally so. Fast forward a few months to December 2019, and I was onboarding to my dream job as a Reach apprentice at LinkedIn. As I tell you the rest of my story, feel free to put your dream job in the chat. I was placed on an amazing design team as an engineer, so I split my time between both. Some projects were in React, some were in Figma. Some were fixing bugs and others were making them. And I wish I were kidding, but I'm not. I definitely spent a decent number of sprints refining my initial code and learning how to interpret error messages. But I also started to get involved in other ways. I participated in hackathons, spoke at tech talks, signed up for an accessibility engineering program, and volunteered to support our accessibility office hours. I was then asked to be a local co-lead for our employee resource group that supports mental health and people with disabilities. All of this work emboldened me, allowed me to wear many hats, and led me to meet our core team of people working on accessibility at LinkedIn. This incredible group of people allowed me to help plan GAD and NDEAM events. They sponsored me as a person to help make sure our productivity tools are accessible. I spent a lot of time studying WCAG standards, assistive technologies, and types of disabilities. Through my work, I discovered one of the biggest lessons for success, which is this. Every facet of the business needs to be accessibility aware for 3 reasons. 1, anyone can acquire a disability at any time, as you learn my friend's story. 2, quote, people with disabilities make our products better, unquote, as Jenny Lake Fleury stated in her February 8th congressional hearing. And 3, if you want to make an intentional difference in the lives of billions of customers, accessibility is a great way to go about it. I came to realize this thing that I needed to help 27 young children have access to more opportunities, this thing my friend needed to regain their life, this thing that many teams overlook until it has legal repercussions, was the thing I didn't accidentally fall into, but that I had been chasing this entire time. This thing called accessibility is my multidisciplinary way to positively do good in the world. So, if we're going to be intentional about it, what leadership skills make for a great accessibility evangelist? Put your thoughts in the chat. For me, the first one is the ability to build a company-wide network. An accessibility leader has a network that is cross-functional so they can make progress on all fronts, and they build that network by being visible, being vocal, and being valuable. As I was doing this work, I would attend X events and meet people from HR, DEI, or sales. Because I wanted to host Y as a guest speaker, the event planning process led me to meet A, B, and C in legal, marketing, and finance. I was on an engineering project and brought up accessibility during the planning phase. So from the very beginning, we developed the platform to be quite accessible. This milestone was highlighted in a product demo to our executives, which provided more momentum for other accessibility-related initiatives at the company. All this time, by getting involved, reaching out to people I don't know, and speaking up for accessibility, I was able to build a robust network that spans the company vertically and horizontally. But none of what happened according to plan. And I'm glad, because more things happened and better things happened than I could ever have planned for. In fact, I didn't even have a plan. I just knew what I cared about and how I wanted to show up, and then I jumped in and did what I could do to help. It was another moment when intentionality and hard work paid off. We are on slide 15. So in the chat, I'd like you to put your personal mission statement. I know this is a big ask, so no pressure if you don't have one, but it's something worth thinking about. I think every good accessibility evangelist can define why they are enthusiastic about accessibility. I shared with you that things were going pretty well. I was doing my engineering work, designing new products with accessibility in mind, and creating trainings and documentation for fellow engineers and designers. Then someone who I did my very first LinkedIn hackathon with asked to mentor me. It happened to be on a day that was not a good day. I don't have many of those, but it was in the middle of the pandemic. I hadn't left my home for 3 weeks and I was drained. I was personally dealing with some limiting beliefs around being a female that were now affecting how big I allowed myself to be. When I say big, I'm referring to my full potential. If I know I am amazing, but I only let myself show up as mediocre, then I'm acting small. Sometimes I let myself do this. Other times I've got to let go and I've got to go big. If I know I'm expressing my full authentic self with all my energy, love, and care, then to me, I've gone big. This idea works for me. If it doesn't work for you, no worries, but pick a definition that does and still choose to show up with all you've got. So back to my limiting beliefs. It was lunchtime on a rainy day in the Bay, and I was staring out the window. I had to pull it together, quote unquote, because I had a meeting soon. But before I did, I just sat down on the floor, closed my eyes, and asked for a female mentor who could guide me through some of this. Since most of my mentors in my life have been men, I wasn't sure who this would be or how they would show up. I just knew I needed them. So I opened my eyes, opened my laptop, and got on my next call. 30 minutes later, I had my mentor. And I'm sure some of you all are curious about how it happened. So during the call, my colleague and I had chatted about work, and then at the last minute, they asked me if I was open to having a mentor. And if I was, I should contact so-and-so. Well, so-and-so happened to be a very strong female at the company. Here was my mentor. Over the next year, with her support, I addressed my inner critic, chopped off all my hair, and developed 3 important things for a leader: conviction, vision, and humility. I connected with my purpose and turned it into a powerful mission statement: serve widely, give greatly. This became my engine for everything else that followed. An important part of this process was recognizing that I got to where I was because of my work and who I am, not in spite of it. Along with naming and taming my inner critic, we worked to remove false beliefs. Some false beliefs were thinking my success was because of luck, that I can't be considered an expert because I don't have official accessibility training, or that I got to where I am because people were just being gracious or nice, which they were. People at LinkedIn are super nice, but that's not what led to the impact I had. Once those false beliefs were better managed through a process of coming to terms with the reality of who I am and what I can do, I was able to show up and go big. My first big moves were speaking on accessibility at the Grace Hopper conference this past fall, raising awareness about accessibility best practices at our company-wide engineering meeting, and now AXCON. And there's a few more things in the works. Those were things that I never planned for, but applied myself to one of them, which gave me the opportunity to show up at the next one. Showing up at the next one led to the next invite, the next connection, and the next opportunity to deny a false belief, which empowered me to make the next bit of impact. It's an iterative process, but if you take small steps in a consistent direction, you'll end up where you're trying to go. The biggest key is go and do, intentionally and in a wide variety of ways. So on slide 19, by now you might be thinking, okay, I can go, but what do I do? There are many areas in the wonderful world of accessibility that you can plug into. And to me, they are all interconnected and build upon each other over time. As we get better at one, it leads to us leveling up in another. As a kid, I really enjoyed the game of life. And you can throw in the chat, what's your favorite game? For anyone who hasn't played it, it's a board game where everyone picks a house, a salary, and a job. As you play the game, life events happen to you, such as visiting a museum, having a child, or winning an award. My favorite part was always picking the job because you never knew what you were going to get. But once I got the card, it led to a whirlwind of dreaming what my life would be like with that career. Most often, I hoped for teacher, singer, or business person. So let's have a little fun and pretend we are playing the game of life, the Accessibility Evangelist version. You have 5 choices for your career. Put the one you want in the chat. Here are your 5 options: architect, executive, teacher, storyteller, and model. So again, architect, executive, teacher, storyteller, or model. If you picked the first one, architect, you are most likely ensuring your company's products, either bought or built, are accessible, usable, and compliant. You have skills in engineering, design, project or product management, or provide legal guidance and support. The executive sponsors accessibility as a top priority across the company. You probably sponsor the employee resource group that supports people with disabilities, and you have a great ability to influence culture, helping to ensure all types of employees feel like they belong. If you chose to be a teacher, You are in charge of creating trainings, documentation, and resources for employees across different departments. These resources teach them about accessibility best practices that apply specifically to their daily job and department operations. You give employees the tools they need to ensure that the business they're doing is accessible. This could look like building products that work for everyone, using inclusive hiring practices, sending out presentation slides before the meeting, or simply asking a new client if they need any accommodations. Next, we have the storyteller. Storytellers feel confident advocating for accessibility, sharing why it's important to them, and using their social platforms to uplift the stories of people with disabilities. They could also be a person with a disability who is sharing their own story. All stories help the business understand their users, and the humans of the business become compassionate advocates for accessibility and people with disabilities. Lastly, we have the models. Now, I'm sure if you chose this one, I can safely assume you are pretty stylish. However, this kind of model isn't modeling fashion, but fashionable behavior. Instead of walking the runway, they walk the talk. They model for others what to do, how to do it, and how easy it is to get it done. They generate energy and engagement, signaling to others, something is happening here and you're going to want to be a part of it. By walking the talk, it encourages more architects to build usable and delightful products, which can encourage more executives to sponsor, which can so on and so on, furthering a cycle of influence. Everyone levels up and increases the expectations for what the company provides for its customers and employees. This cycle is a journey and it takes a village. No one person can be the evangelist. Otherwise, this isn't going to work. In my opinion, ideally, there would be an accessibility champion on every team in every org who can move this cycle along through each stage of the company's product development and hiring cycles. On slide 25, to summarize, progress over perfection. It's a journey and every person and company is in a different phase. Next, accessibility is intentional. If you're not thinking about accessibility, then do I need to say more? You're not thinking about accessibility. Accessibility is multidisciplinary. We cannot hire one person to represent accessibility evangelism. It takes everyone from every department, background, and way of thought to chime in their own way if we really want to do this well. And one quick note, today's definition of well is going to be different than tomorrow's because things change, we get better, technology gets better, humans get kinder, and so on. So be generous over time, as the North Star you define today will not be your North Star in 10 years. But the changing of your North Star over time doesn't mean that you're getting it wrong. The only way to quote unquote get this wrong is to not define a North Star to begin with. Accessibility is accessible. It can be done now and anyone can help. Start with the little things. Give an audio description in your next meeting. Ask a new colleague if they need any accommodations. Connect people across departments, or host an event where someone can speak about their disability. Better yet, hire someone with a disability. Then step up as an accessibility leader by finding your why, which will fuel your what, build your network, which will source your how, and remove false beliefs to speed up your win. Of course, you, your family, your employees, and your customers are your who. As you think about what are going to be your first next steps, and feel free to put them in the chat, I'd love to know. I'll leave you with this quote, which is the core of my mission and comes from Mr. Brian Dennis, who also testified at the February 8th congressional hearing on accessibility. Quote, "At the end of the day, what our country, and honestly any country should be, is a collection of people who are trying their best to build each other up," end quote. I couldn't have said this better myself. And honestly, in these current times, it should encourage us to hold these words close to our hearts. Thank you very much for your time today. I know we have some extra time for Q&A, and it was a pleasure to be with you. We can continue this conversation on LinkedIn. You can find me on social media platforms at Opportunity Made, and my website is opportunitymade.com. So be sure to look at the attached slide deck, as it has about 20 more slides of information and reflection questions that will help you, your team, or someone you care about grow as an accessibility evangelist. With that, let's open it up for a nice long Q&A.
Thanks, Katherine. Wonderful stuff. I absolutely loved the game section of your talk. It kind of gives you some actionable items to think about accessibility in roles that you're comfortable with. So I just loved how you brought that out. We do have a couple of questions, so I'll just remind everyone, go to the Q&A and throw your questions in there if you have them, and then vote for them so we make sure we get to them. So a couple that have come in, someone wants to know if you have some new ways to meet people or potential mentors or collaborators with the restrictive environment that the pandemic brings. Do you have any suggestions there?
Yeah, thank you for your question. I have heard this from other people as well, that the pandemic and the restrictive environment has made it really difficult for people to find mentors. I understand that and have had a little bit of a different experience myself. So I'll share with you what I've done. I know this may not be comfortable for everyone, but for me, I enjoy reaching out to people that I have some kind of connection with. Maybe they're interested in accessibility. Maybe we attended a virtual event together within the company or through a meetup, and just reaching out. I usually connect on LinkedIn and say, hey, I really enjoyed this, either a topic or something that they said. It's always good to send a connection note with your invite to connect, so that way they know what is the commonality between the two of you. And then from there, you can start to schedule some time to talk. So here's an example. Even in AxCon, I have seen some of our incredible speakers here and have heard things where it's like, wow, I really want to continue this conversation. Connected with them on LinkedIn, and we already have some coffee meets set up. They're virtual, of course, but these are people who don't know me. We just found something in common and we're able to connect that way. If you do happen to reach out to someone and you don't get a response, that is unfortunate, but that's probably the worst that's going to happen. So I highly encourage everyone and anyone to reach out. If you are specifically looking for a mentor, if it's around accessibility, there's a lot of people in this community who love helping each other out. I believe it was Jenny who said, you know, this is not a competitive environment. We need to support each other. And that's really the culture and the attitude that I've seen between people in the accessibility realm. And so that's one route you can go. If you're looking for a mentor in general, another great place to start is with your manager. I would highly recommend share with them, what are your professional goals? Who are you as a person? If you have a personal mission statement, we've all seen through this time how our personal lives are coming more into our professional lives. And so if you feel comfortable around cueing them in to your mission statement, what you want to accomplish in your life, then that gives them the information they need to kind of put their ear to the ground and listen to the conversations around them, research their own network, and see who they can connect you with. So I just recommend share what you want, make that vocal, be visible, attend events, because people don't know what it is that you want and what you need help with until you say it.
Great advice. What about influential books or articles you've read through the years? Do you have any recommendations for that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I do. I love to read a lot. I guess I would be curious to know if this is specifically in the realm of accessibility or outside of that realm. If we're talking specifically in the realm of accessibility, there's not a ton of books that I have run across on that particular subject that aren't maybe technical textbooks. But feel free to go on Amazon and, or wherever you get books and take a look. What I would say for me personally, I love doing the inner work and constantly refining myself as a person. So there are different books. I believe one is called The Four Agreements. That's a book that I enjoy reading. I have a whole list of them on my website, so you can go and take a look. Actually, I think it's on my blog, and I'll put it on my website there. So it's hard to recall them in this moment, but we can connect later and I'll provide more for you there.
Perfect. Thank you. What about effective methods that you found for evangelizing accessibility so that others take action?
Yeah, this is important. And this to me is the crux of the work. Like, yes, it's important to build products that are accessible, but if it's not part of our culture and if it's not a priority throughout the company, then it can be a little bit hard to do that. So in terms of evangelizing or advocating accessibility, I'll go back to what I mentioned in a slide before, which is be visible, be vocal, and be valuable. So wherever you can, get in front of someone and talk about it. That could be in your team meeting. That could be in a larger, company-wide meeting. That could be on social media. That could be at an event. There's many different opportunities to make that happen, or just write a post on whatever your favorite platform is, to kind of promote your personal connection to it. The most important part of all of this is telling the story. If people don't have that emotional connection to accessibility, if it's something that's quote unquote over there, then there's not that tactile feeling to it, and they don't have that personal why. But once someone can hear a story of like, whoa, this could happen to anyone at any time. You mean my employees could go skiing on the weekend and they come back with a broken arm and now they can only operate with, let's say, a keyboard, and they can't use their mouse, and that means that they can't use their tools, for their job. Okay, we need to do something about this, right? And it's more than just able-bodied people, obtaining a disability, right? I want to make sure that we're also hiring people with disabilities, because that is a large demographic that has been ignored for a long time. And having a disability has nothing to do with you being a talented human being. So really find ways that you can get your voice out there, that you can share the story. Just think about people in your own family. If they have a disability, if they are aging and they've lost a bit of their eyesight or a bit of their hearing, watch them operate an app or use your company's product and really try to empathize with what they're doing, and then promote that story. Share that story with their permission at work or online, to keep generating that emotional pull, that emotional why for this work.
There's also some information that I know is related to the aging, as far as your ability to understand technology. So as you age, your ability to understand technology decreases too. So that's something to be mindful of with everything that you're saying there, Katherine. Mm-hmm. Another one, which I think is really poignant, is how do you motivate people who seem annoyed when they hear accessibility? Have you come across that, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, in terms of have I come across it, no. I think that there's a lot of openness, especially at this point in time, to accessibility. And maybe that is a silver lining of the pandemic. I believe another speaker mentioned this too, that we have had our eyes open. People whose eyes weren't open, people who weren't experiencing this kind of experience, have had their eyes open to the value of thinking about this and how it needs to be thought of. And so I don't see a lot of pushback, but in terms of what can you do or how can you make it front and center? again, it comes back to that human interaction, that story, that draw. So I don't know that I'm fully answering the question. And Heidi, if you want to repeat it, that would be helpful.
Sorry, I don't have it up anymore, Katherine.
That's totally fine. So if it's your question, just follow up with me. I think I answered half of it and then I missed the second half. So please feel free to connect.
All right, this next one is about not necessarily accessibility related, but this is a word I think a lot of people are hearing lately, and that's that imposter syndrome. Do you have any tips for shedding that?
I chuckle as soon as I hear this because this is my thing. I have done a lot of tech talks on imposter syndrome, and it really is a buzzword right now. To me, what that is working through those false beliefs, those false ideas we have about ourselves. So for me, in my story, I shared that I was having trouble with being a trouble around being a female. And not to get too much into it, what that means is, and I'll take a moment just to be a little bit vulnerable here. I was sent the message when I was younger that things were wrong with me, that I wasn't good enough because I was a woman. And not to get into gender and all that kind of stuff. It's mostly just that it's inevitable that the message was sent that it's inevitable that something is wrong with you and there's nothing you can do about it. So that created a false belief in me because of someone else's behavior and messaging. And I've had to spend years to work through that process and say, no, like, excuse you, that's not correct, right? And reestablish a different way of seeing myself. And so once I can get to that point, now anything can come at me and I can check in and say, is this accurate? Yes or no? Because I have that core. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of checking in and saying, well, what do I know about myself? And does this actually match it? Am I currently in a place of fear? Am I being accurate about what I know about myself? Or am I already buying into the preconceived notions or messages that have been sent to me, right? So once you can go through that work, then it is easier to undo those patterns and those ways of thinking. So when you have that next moment of, oh my goodness, I'm not a good speaker, or I'm not going to do good here, you can check in with yourself and say, okay, how many other times have I spoken and people enjoyed it? How many other things have I done well? Ground yourself in that, because that's probably the truth, not these other voices, not these other words. So here's a book that comes to mind that I just read recently, and it'll answer the other question. The Surrender Experiment is by Michael Singer. And for me, it was a really great book because it talked about anytime that you have that voice come up, surrender to it, say, okay, I hear you, so you get offered a new position and that voice comes up and says, you can't do this. You're not good enough. You're not trained. Okay, I hear you, but let's lean in. Let's go check this out. Let's go try it just in case. And the more times that you do that, the less power that negative voice has, and the more that life opens up. And now it's working for you, and you see it working for you rather than against you, as that our negative voice, our imposter syndrome would have us feel.
And Katherine, I want you to know that there is a post that says that your dad's here. He says that he might be a big military man, but your story about him made him teary-eyed. He's very proud of you.
That's super cool. Hey, Dad.
Everybody thought it was super cool too, so I wanted to make sure you got that.
Oh, well, he's an incredible man, and we've had a lot of stuff that we've had to work through together. And you all get to see a very vulnerable moment from me, but he really is incredible. Things come up in our lives where we misunderstand each other, we have misperceptions, and that creates those false beliefs and those false patterns of behavior. So we've had to do a ton of work to get through that together. And it's been hard. It's been really, really hard. But you know what? We're in such a good spot now because we've spent the last 15 years doing that work. So thank you, Dad, for being here. Thank you, everyone else, for being here. And Heidi, thank you for sharing that.
Yep. I have just one more that I think we have time for, Katherine, if you're still in it with us.
Let's do it.
This one might be a little more complicated, but some folks would like to know more about how you integrated accessibility throughout the company vertically and horizontally. How did you approach that?
Yeah. That's a great question. My first answer is I don't know. And the reason why I say that is because that goes back to the I can't do this, but then you say yes, you're going to do it, and now all of a sudden another opportunity comes. So so speaking at the Grace Hopper conference was, kind of nerve-wracking, right? You're going to be speaking in front of a bunch of people. But then I said yes to that, and that led to the next thing and the next thing. So people got to see me speak at that conference and, thought good things and said, well, let's have her talk about this in this other context. I spoke about it in that context, which gave me visibility to some of our leadership and our executives. And then that led to the next thing. So when I say vertically and horizontally, horizontal is the influence you have on your peers, on your teams, and that's by doing the gritty work. We're going to make sure what we build and what we buy is accessible, and we're going to be in communication with each other. We are going to be learning. We're going to be teaching each other. We're going to be modeling that behavior in our meetings, right? Invite each other to these events. I know I have some incredible colleagues who are on here right now. And so we get to learn from each other, and that's how we inspire each other horizontally. And then by being vocal and being visible, you also influence leadership and you influence vertically. So again, if you're passionate about something, but you're not saying anything, no one knows how passionate you are, how much you care. So you've got to find a way to get out there. And in society, we tend to think that you go from 0 to 100 instantly, because we like to gloss over and just show the shiny parts. But it takes a long time, and a lot of it is out of your control. So do what you can with what you have, where you're at. Talk to one person, research one thing, go into your product and test it out. And if you don't know how to test it, there are people at this conference who have been talking about how to test it. You can reach out to me. There are people who will support you in this process. The first next best step is just connecting with me or connecting with anyone else on this call who cares about accessibility, and we can guide you from there. And then that leads to the next, to the next, to the next, and you will get there. It won't be tomorrow, but I promise you, we will help you get there.
Mm-hmm. It's really important. One step at a time. Small steps are okay. It's about taking action, however small it might be.
Exactly.
Katherine, it has been such a pleasure to hear you speak today. Thank you so much for sharing. You really are an inspiration. I also want to thank everybody else that joined today's call. It's been great to have you here. Thank you for all of your activity in the chats and being so engaged. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Please take care.
Thank you, everyone.